Hello, my name is Cyclone's Oz, and today we're going to be taking a look at the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Kirirly, and we'll be talking about her impact on the Queensland weather. We're also going to be taking a look at a possible Coral Sea tropical cyclone development, and then we're going to take a brief look around the nation and see what weather is in store for the capital cities and inland regions over the next 10 days. So make sure you are subscribed for more uploads like this, and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. But we're taking a look at the remnants of the ex-tropical cyclone Kirirly right now. She is located up north of Burketown. Actually, she's just about to get herself over the waters of the Gulf of Carpentaria around Mornington Island. There's quite a lot of thunderstorm activity firing up actually around the Gulf of Carpentaria, where the centre of the storm would likely be, which is just about to re-emerge offshore now. The interesting thing about this is the fact that we didn't expect ex-tropical cyclone Kirirly to get herself offshore again, but the fact that she is going to get herself offshore does give it a slim chance of reformation as a tropical cyclone. Now, do I think that this is going to become a tropical cyclone once again? Not likely. However, it's going to have about 36 hours over water, where if conditions were a little bit better for the storm, it would likely be able to intensify into a tropical cyclone of sorts. So we're going to play the Eastern Relief model run through, because it is probably the most reliable forecast model to look at for this ex-tropical cyclone right now. You can see initialized with the pressure of 999 millibars, teetering on the edge of becoming a tropical cyclone as per pressure estimates, and also teetering on the coastline at this time. Then it moves offshore, kind of just hovers very slowly onshore. It's definitely in a stalling fashion at this point, and it spends about 24 to 36 hours offshore before re-emerging back over Queensland and then moving inland for good. And then here it will be terminally weakening at this point as it moves over Burketown, then down towards Gregory, and then towards the Queensland Northern Territory border via Mount Isa. But it still holds a fairly good structure, and it looks like it does have a chance of being a tropical cyclone at this point as it meanders through northern Queensland, but the chances of it actually getting to tropical cyclone classification as per the Bureau of Meteorology's cyclone classification standards are quite unlikely. It is, however, likely to produce gale force winds along parts of the Queensland coastline on the Gulf of Carpentaria, anywhere down from around Arakan down to I would say Burketown and Mornington Island are at risk of receiving gale force wind gusts as this storm moves inland. And yeah, basically inland communities as well are at risk of also receiving gale force wind gusts as the tropical cyclone meanders further inland. You can see Mount Isa there. Actually, these reds are cyclone force wind gusts, winds of 64 kilometers an hour or higher, and the cyclone does actually get to cyclone status as per maximum sustained winds, which is quite interesting, and I reckon that will just be concentrated in strong thunderstorm activity around the storm centre. It's very unlikely it'll be a cyclone by around Saturday evening, and if it is actually going to get to cyclone status again, it will only be a Category 1 strength cyclone, and it will likely happen around later this evening into early Friday morning before it moves inland for good. But the rain threat is really something from this tropical cyclone. We're going to take a look at the Eastern Relief forecast model for the rain threat. The Access model generally massively and wildly overestimates how much rainfall is expected, and the GFS model just doesn't have the resolution that we're looking for. So the Eastern Relief is sort of the sweet spot for forecast models in the Australian region, but when the Eastern Relief model fails, you can always take a look at the Access and the Icon model for high resolution information, and the GFS for more reliable track information for tropical cyclones. So that's a little bit of what I've seen with tracking tropical cyclones over the past 5 years in the Australian regions. However, again, nothing is better than using a mix of all three forecast models, which is what I use in these videos to try and get the most accurate picture in these tropical systems. But you can see a lot of rainfall expected in those purples and blacks, those very strong thunderstorms, as it moves ashore again on Friday, really firing up some good thunderstorm activity around its centre. And you can see it's probably going to have a nice little inflow band at this point. It looks like a tropical cyclone as per the rainfall initialization here. So it's going to be very interesting what it actually looks like on satellite imagery in about 2 days' time, maybe 36 hours' time. And it's a pretty consistent picture with the Eastern Relief and the GFS model in terms of positioning for the tropical cyclone, and I believe also for the Icon model as well, very similar to the Eastern Relief in terms of positioning and time. The Access model is just a little bit further towards the east on this tropical cyclone, but again, fairly on the mark as well. Now, taking a look at the Eastern Relief total rainfall accumulation over the next 5 days, this gives us an idea of how much rainfall can be expected for certain locations locations associated with this tropical system. You can see around Mornington Island, you'd be looking at maybe about 200 millimetres of rainfall, and then inland where this storm makes its quote-unquote landfall around Burkton, anywhere towards the west of it, you'll be seeing the maximum amounts of rainfall. Around Doomadgee, you'll be looking at around 500 millimetres of rainfall. Now, in this part of Queensland, that's probably about a year's worth of rainfall. Rainfall on the Gulf of Carpentaria is so wildly unpredictable year on year, so the amounts that certain places can get year on year vary significantly, but 500 millimetres is probably an average annual rainfall total out here, so you're probably looking at one or two locations picking up 3/4 of a year to a year's worth of rainfall from this weather event. In this part of Queensland, it's not exactly a huge concern considering its extreme isolation and low population density. However, there will be rivers that get to that moderate or major flooding alert, so if you live up here, if you've got property up here, it's a very good idea to be preparing for a significant rainfall event today, moving things to higher ground, or sandbagging up sheds that are at risk of flooding, because there is a significant risk that you get a huge amount of rainfall from this tropical system. Basically anywhere between the Queensland Northern Territory border across to Mount Isa up to Croydon and then towards, I would be preparing for some significant flash flooding as far north as maybe halfway up the Cape York Peninsula, because there is a chance that on the inflow bands of this tropical system, anywhere along the Gulf of Carpentaria coastline, further east of the landfall site, and I use the term landfall very loosely because it won't be a tropical cyclone at landfall, they are at risk of receiving some very significant rainfall totals from this tropical system. And then as this storm moves inland, it will also likely dump quite a bit of rainfall on communities south of Mount Isa. There'll be one or two places that pick up to 200 millimetres, but mostly it'll be widespread rainfall totals between 25 and 50 millimetres as you get down towards Birdsville, Moomba, Tierburra, and then into northern New South Wales. But again, towards the end of the 10-day forecast period, you'll likely be seeing a thunderstorm event materialise out of this, and locations across central and eastern New South Wales will likely be impacted by some substantially severe thunderstorms as a result of ex-tropical cyclone Kirirly's passage. She would have been living for quite a long time. I believe if the storm, its remnant low, makes it for another 8 or 9 days, you'd be looking at a lifespan of around 20 to 24 days, something around that ballpark, including the tropical low period that it was for literally a week in the Coral Sea. It's been quite a long tracking system. It's been a very difficult storm to forecast. I've not envied any tracker or I guess chaser for this tropical cyclone, because it has been an absolute bitch of a storm to forecast. Very difficult storm to forecast, and I mean, we got it all wrong in the end. Now we're going to take a look at the Coral Sea storm situation as well, because I've been talking about this storm that's likely to develop in the Coral Sea. It will develop from that tropical low that's been sitting offshore from the Sunshine Coast over the past couple of days, which is now going to get its act together and move deeper into the Coral Sea towards New Caledonia and Vanuatu, and that will happen over the course of today and Friday. Now, as it gets towards New Caledonia and Vanuatu, it's not likely to strengthen much. However, it will likely organise itself a little bit better, even in the fate of some pretty harsh environments, because by Sunday and Monday, wind shear will certainly be quite high for this tropical low as it moves through. You can actually see down here the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Kirirly moving through northern New South Wales by around next Monday and Tuesday. This will likely be a rain threat for them as well, but I digress. Talking about this system up here, if it does become a tropical cyclone, it will pick up the name of Tropical Cyclone Lincoln, but as per the Eastern River forecast model, it doesn't happen. It peaks out as a tropical low by around maybe Monday or Tuesday. In fact, it looks like it might even be at its strongest right about now, and it's just on this very steady and agonizingly slow weakening trend until about Friday, when it does dissipate around New Caledonia or Vanuatu. But again, this is just one forecast picture, and there will be a lot of tropical low activity across the Solomon Islands and south of the Marshall Islands by around next week and next weekend, and that will likely drive tropical cyclone activity in the South Pacific. There's already a tropical cyclone, or actually two tropical cyclones, at a chance of developing next Wednesday and Thursday in a very close part in the South South Pacific, actually. I believe you'd be looking at areas close to Kiribati at this point, where you'd be looking at a tropical cyclone developing, but still a minimal threat to land. And once again, I do digress because we're looking at this coral sea system here. Now, the GFS and the XSG3 have two very similar looks at this tropical system, but they're very different to the Eastern RF. So we don't have that model congruency yet, and I'll show you that now. Model congruency is what we want when making a good forecast like this. It gives us certainty and confidence with a landfall site, and also a good picture of the intensity, and we don't have that right now, so it's a very difficult forecast to make. And I'd give a tropical cyclone developing up here maybe a 15 to 20% chance at this point. It could happen. It's possible that we get something over the South Pacific or across the Coral Sea in the next 10 days. It's a very likely chance that we do get that to happen, but if it's going to be in the Coral Sea, it's a low chance, and it's also a very low chance that it impacts Australia at all. But you can see by around next Wednesday, we've got a fully fledged tropical cyclone starting to develop here just to the west of Vanuatu, and this thing spins itself up very nicely, becoming what looks to be a Category 3 strength severe tropical cyclone and making a landfall on northern New Caledonia before spinning into the Coral Sea and becoming what looks to be a very strong tropical cyclone here, a pressure of 954 millibars by next Saturday. You're probably looking at a Category 4 strength severe tropical cyclone at this point, heading straight for Australia. Now, there is no point in panicking about this system right now. It is a long way out, and it's not even properly forecasted by the Bureau of Meteorology yet. They've got it tagged as 06U, so you can track it on their website as 06U, but this is probably not going to be the way that this storm pans out. We've had wild forecast swings over the past day or so, which is fairly common in forming tropical cyclones. So once again, the chances of a tropical cyclone developing are there, but the fact that we don't have model congruency at this time gives me absolutely no position to comment on a forecast landfall site for this tropical cyclone, because it is a very unlikely situation to happen at this point. But by around Monday and Tuesday, we'll have a very good idea on what's going to happen in the Coral Sea. So if you are subscribed, you'll get a lot of information come the Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday updates regarding if this tropical cyclone is a go-ahead, and if so, where it's going to be impacting, if it impacts any locations at all. Now, I'm going to draw this back to Tuesday, and we're going to take a look at the XSG3 model. Once again, a very wildly different forecast swing at south of Vanuatu at this point, and quite a bit stronger as well, and a very messy and broad system at this point. This actually wouldn't be classed as a tropical cyclone as per the Bureau of Meteorology standards, even though it has winds approaching 50 knots on the southern side. This would be classed as a tropical low because of the Bureau of Meteorology's gale rule, but as it becomes a tropical cyclone by around next Thursday or Friday in the Australian region, it does do a little bit of intensification, getting up to what looks to be maybe Category 2 status, maybe even a Category 3 strength tropical cyclone by around next Saturday, heading for the Australian coastline around Mackay. And it's a very big system at this point as well. Now, I was just talking about model congruency and how we have a big lack of it. Now, the GFS and the Axis actually have something fairly similar in the next 10 days in terms of intensity. They've just got it in a very different location. The GFS has it about 400 kilometers or so towards the east. So we don't actually have that model congruency at this point, and once again, we'll have to be watching this forecast very closely, but Queensland might need to go once again on notice to be receiving a tropical cyclone impact, because this looks like a very strong cyclone as it moves towards the Australian coastline with wind speeds in excess of 180 kilometers an hour. It'll be a lot more powerful than Cyclone Kirirly as she made landfall, and if you were to extrapolate this track, you're probably looking at a landfall around Bowen, so in a relatively similar location to tropical Cyclone Kirirly, but thankfully Bowen did miss out on the worst of the system. Now, this is very much something that we should be watching out for, especially if you live in the central coastal regions of Queensland. You should be watching this system very closely, how it develops, how it forms, and also how it intensifies, if she does at all. Because once again, there is a chance that this system completely busts out and doesn't intensify whatsoever. But again, it is cyclone season. We're moving into February, which is historically the busiest month across Australia, and it's imperative that you're staying on top of the weather. And there's no better way to do that in an entertaining and informative fashion than by subscribing to this channel. So if you haven't already, we're about 80 away from 10,000, and your support really does mean a lot. So thank you so much for that. And also, if you want to get some exclusive perks, click the join button down below. Now, I would also like to add, for viewers in Western Australia who might be feeling like they're missing out on the coverage here because there's absolutely squat happening over there right now. Well, for my Perth viewers, you are currently under some heat wave warnings, and I know because I do live in Perth and it's bloody hot here. However, I wouldn't go as far to call this a heat wave. It's some pretty hot weather that we're seeing across Perth right now, with maxima today expected to tickle 45 degrees Celsius in some places, especially up towards Enibiaba. We could be seeing some very high temperatures up there, towards 45 degrees Celsius, and even up towards Kalbarri, you'd be looking at temperatures approaching 46 or 47, north of Northampton, up towards Gascoyne Junction. But down towards Perth, it's not swelteringly hot. I mean, 40 is a hot day, but it's nothing to write home about, considering we get those days every year in summer. But yeah, driven by this developing La Nina, we're definitely having a hotter than usual summer in terms of maximum temperatures. So yeah, make sure you're staying cool, staying in that swimming pool or staying at the beach, you're using your sunscreen, and you're also drinking plenty of water, because it is very, very warm over here right now. But I wouldn't call this full-blown heatwave conditions. I would label this as the Australian summer at work. However, last night was certainly very hot. I don't think my room has dropped below 24 degrees Celsius in a couple of days now, and it's already starting to warm up here. As I look at my weather station, I live very close to the coast as well, so a hot day expected for me means it's going to be almost unbearable inland, but I do digress. Around the nation, elsewhere, temperature-wise, nothing too much out of the ordinary. Western Australia is the big outlier here, with about 95% of the state expecting a maximum above 38 degrees Celsius to come tomorrow. So it's going to be a very hot day across Western Australia and also into South Australia and the Northern Territory as well. But that's more driven by the tropical activity happening across the across Queensland and the Northern Territory. But yeah, some pretty hot days in store for the rest of Australia, as you'd expect to come this time of the year. But once again, nothing to write home about. I'm not seeing any 50 degrees Celsius days or warmer. Could actually get a little bit warmer around Alice Springs come next Monday and Tuesday, and then after that the forecast becomes slightly more reliable. Hopefully we get some relief to the heat across parts of Western Australia though, because I would love 1 or 2 cool nights within the next week or so, which I do think we are going to get. But yeah, I'm really starting to waffle here. Thank you so much for watching this forecast update. If you did enjoy it, then please do consider to subscribe and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. Thank you so much for the channel members for sponsoring this video, and I'll catch you all next storm. Goodbye.